In this video, I'm going to show you all of the AI functionalities that currently exist inside of Parlay. The Parlay Genie is our AI agent that automates critical tasks for teachers, makes their lives simpler, and makes them smarter. The first is teachers can log on when they start to plan for a discussion, and they could ask the Parlay Genie to create custom discussion prompts based on articles, YouTube videos, and any inputted topics. This works for both the written and the verbal discussions. Next, the Parlay Genie will actually give preliminary feedback to students when they're writing their response in the written roundtable. So before they submit it to get feedback and share their ideas with the class, they can ask the Parlay Genie, which will give them generalized feedback, strengths, and opportunities for them to improve on their submission based on the original discussion question and discussion prompt and the assessment criteria that the teacher has set up inside of Parlay. So next, once students have submitted their ideas to a written roundtable or in a verbal roundtable, once they've shared their ideas out loud and the Parlay Genie has transcribed those ideas, the Genie recap will summarize the discussion and generate follow-up questions to deepen student thinking on that topic. And not only that, it's actually going to take student thinking into account when it suggests those follow-up questions. So we could spin up a whole new discussion, or we could just keep having a conversation in that specific activity to deepen student thinking. Lastly, once the discussion is over and the teacher's ready to go and assess and give feedback, the teacher can use the Parlay Genie to analyze all of the participation of the student in the written roundtable, and the Genie will provide the teacher with suggested written feedback that the teacher can make any edits and modifications to and send it back to the student. Let's see what this looks like within the context of the app itself. So first, I'm inside of my course. I'm ready to make my new roundtable, and maybe I have some ideas from scratch, but maybe I want to ask the Parlay Genie to give me some initial questions to start with, and I can tweak them from there. I'm going to run a written roundtable, and maybe I want to have a discussion about, let's say, the symbolism of the green light in The Great Gatsby. I'm going to use this for my grade 10 class, so I'll check that off, and we'll start with 4 questions and see what it comes up with. It's going to take a few seconds and basically come up with higher order thinking questions that will lend well for discussion. So here we go. We have a draft prompt, a draft lesson, and we have 4 questions. So how does the green light symbol appear throughout The Great Gatsby, and what evolving meanings does it take on for J. Gatsby? Compare and contrast the symbolism with some of the other symbols, analyze the green light from your perspective, and looking forward, how can the symbolism be applied to the greater context of modern society? So I really like that last one. So maybe I'll copy that one, but let's do it again and have it regenerate, see what it comes up with. So just like that, I have 4 new questions. Again, I like that last one, so I might take out a couple of these ones and maybe we'll just change them up a little bit, and I can make any changes, and then I'm ready to go and I can create that roundtable. The other option when you're using the Parlay Genie, maybe you not only have a topic, but maybe you actually have a resource that you'd like to use as stimulus for the discussion with your students. For example, maybe it's a YouTube video. We're going to have a conversation about an intro to economics. So I have this really great crash course video that I know covers a lot of these general topics we'll be diving into. All I have to do is paste the URL of that YouTube video, and it's going to scrape the transcript of that video and come up with, again, higher order thinking questions based on that video. And there we go. We have 3 new questions that I could use. I could modify, I could change, I could even embed the YouTube video right into this prompt right here, and we'd be off to the races to actually get this lesson and discussion started. So maybe this time I'm going to run a verbal discussion, and I have this article that I want students to read as a stimulus for our conversation. I'm just going to copy the link and paste it right there, and choose my grade level that I'd like it to work at or give me questions for. And then just like that, we have our discussion questions that I can make any modifications to and start the discussion right away. Next is when the Parlay Genie can help out students if the teacher chooses to turn that feature on for students. When they're writing their initial response in the written roundtable. So let's say, I'm going to go and I'm going to start writing my response here. So once a student is writing their idea and they're ready to submit, they can go and ask the Genie for feedback, which is going to analyze their response in comparison to the discussion prompt and the criteria that the teacher set. And it's going to generate some feedback, some strengths, and some areas for improvement and overall actionable suggestions that they can use and make any changes to before they go and submit their ideas to the class. So just like that, the Genie has come up with some general feedback. And sure enough, it says that I did a good job at selecting my topic that I was going to research, but I didn't actually share any evidence or reasoning into my own view and what I actually concluded about this thing that I researched. So that's a good reminder that I need to go and do a little bit more research and include that in my submission before I go and submit my idea. Now, once the students submit and they use the Parlay Genie, the teacher will always be able to see whether or not that student used the Parlay Genie, what the feedback from the Genie was, what the initial post was, and how the student might have actually made some changes to their response after receiving that feedback. Again, the teacher can shut off this feature, but overall, it's a really good way for students to get some initial feedback after they do the work of thinking through it on their own, and they get a little bit of that intervention right away before they actually go and submit and engage with the ideas of other people in the class. Now, the third step of the way that the Parlay Genie helps out teachers and students in the discussion process is after all of the students have submitted their ideas to the written roundtable or after they've shared them all in the verbal roundtable, you can ask the Genie to come up with a recap. So what this is going to do is analyze all of the submissions in the conversation and summarize them for the group. So in this case, in The Great Gatsby, the green light serves as a multifaceted symbol representing hope, unattainable dreams, and the complexities of the American dream. So it goes on to change that. Of course, the teacher can make any changes to that recap, but this is really good for summarizing students that might be away, really just quickly coming back and seeing what this class came up with regards to their answers to these questions, but also a really good way to generate follow-up questions and use this as stimulus for tomorrow's discussion as we dive deeper into this topic area. So from the Parlay Genie recap, you get follow-up questions that are going to push student thinking further based on the level that the students are at. So if the students show a very superficial understanding, we're going to see that in the recap, and we're going to see that those deeper questions push that thinking in the follow-up questions. Again, you can make any changes to these follow-up questions, and then you could either choose to discuss them in the current roundtable, where it would basically add them right below the Genie recap. So any fast finishers or students who are finished early, you can direct them up to the top here and share their thoughts in response to these follow-up questions, or you can actually spin up an entirely new discussion activity in the form of a written or a verbal roundtable and use this follow-up activity in this class. Maybe tomorrow's class we can continue this conversation, or later in the week, maybe even for homework. So a few different ways that you can deepen the conversation and get that help from the Parlay Genie to help structure that. Now, in the verbal roundtable, you could also ask the Parlay Genie to analyze and transcribe the conversation as the conversation is going on. What this is going to do is basically gain access to everyone's microphone, whether it's online or in class, and then listen, the tap and type, and what the students are actually saying. So as the conversation is going on, we have a transcription of what each student said in which order. You can ask the Genie to come up with a summary of that conversation, and it'll also come up with follow-up questions. So we can review this at the end of the discussion as a reflection and kind of like a recap, or you can have students go through this individually on their own, or we can use these follow-up questions to dive deeper into the conversation as it's happening. You could do that in the current roundtable, or you could follow up with a subsequent roundtable in the second half of class, in tomorrow's class, or for homework, or later on in the week. So if I like these questions, of course, I can make any changes to them. I can add them to the current discussion questions, and then we can continue having our conversation. And last but not least, when the teacher is ready to go and actually give feedback to the class and assess students based on the criteria that they set in the settings right over here, then the teacher can go and actually ask the Genie class grader to go and analyze all of the individual student contributions, compare that to the assessment criteria, and then draft some initial written feedback. Now, this is a piece that is hugely time consuming for teachers as they go and they read through all of the responses and all of that thinking that students have done and shared with their peers. The teacher now has some help in synthesizing all of that and coming up with some feedback. So if I click this one student, this was their initial response, and on the right here is the assessment box. I could see that they've made some comments on other people's ideas. I'm going to go and now provide the rubric on my own, but in terms of the written feedback, it's already drafted for me by the Genie, and I could go through and I could make some changes to any of this. So included in this, you might see a specific feedback based on the criteria and the rubric that I set, an overall evaluation, maybe even some follow-up questions for that specific student. So again, as a teacher, I'm going to go and make some changes to this, make sure it's appropriate and relevant and personalized for the student, and I can go and send it.